Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. This time we see a woman who is in a cryogenic chamber and she can't get out. This film starts with a rat being in a maze a few moments. Later a woman is trapped in a cloth and her whole body bound. He forced to move and finally the cloth tore. So he could breathe. He managed to untie it and hit the room. Suddenly the room lit up and there was a robot talking to him. The robot was a medical liaison operator named Milo. He was programmed to meet the medical needs of women, but when he asked to be let out, Milo didn't want to comply because he couldn't get out. He asked for his medical report because he thought he was in the hospital. He screamed for help and struggled, but no one heard him. The oxygen level in the room Mach was getting low as he moved until the remaining 34%. He then knew that the room was having an error and asked Milo to call for help, but no one had called back, so he tried to calm himself down and breathe calmly to save oxygen. Then his memory returned to the past. He saw a small child, a couple and a man carrying lab rat. He then asked Milo what his name was, but Milo just gave him a code. Then he started trying to remember some things and rested when that Milo reminded him that his oxygen had dropped to 33%. He then asked for a diagnosis, but no medical records were found. He found no other way, so he begged Milo to open the room, but Milo wouldn't open without an administrator code. He then asked Milo to call Tap Milo Burke. All communications to outside parties were not available. He said, how did Milo get the medical records? And Milo said that the records were sent by a special line, so he asked Milo to send a voice message using that special line. He managed to contact the police and cried with relief because he was finally able to contact help. But he didn't remember who he was and his past memories were lost, so the police couldn't help much and instead thought that this was prank call. But the police still tried it and asked him to look for information about the room. He found the serial number of the room and read it to the police. The police then connected with his superior, but the call was disconnected. Nevertheless, he started to get clues. He asked Milo to do a DNA search and found a match. Milo shows a number of pictures and he finds out that she is a doctor named Elizabeth. Then he hears a voice from outside, so he screams for help. Then he gets a call from Captain Monroe and he says his name. He also says that his oxygen is at 31% and Milo estimates that he had up to 43 minutes until his oxygen ran out. He became increasingly panicked. Captain Monroe asked him to remember anything. For example, was there someone who wanted to hurt him? Was there any suspicious behavior? But he didn't remember anything. Lee was suspicious that Captain Monroe was keeping something secret from her. Then Captain Monroe explained that from the number in that series, this model had been destroyed 3 years ago. Lee asked Milo to analyze himself and said that he was very healthy and could still live up to 82 years later. Then he panicked even more and thought that someone wanted to hurt him. His heart was beating fast and his blood pressure went up, but Captain Monroe tried to calm Lee down and he was going to contact the factory to ask for the administrator code, but Captain Monroe also said that he needed legal action to contact the factory and was afraid that Lee didn't have much time. Lee became confused and cried at the same time he called to interrupted. The oxygen level is now at 29% and Milo tells Lee that she has no chance of living again. Then a robot hand comes out with a syringe and the hand wants to inject Lee with sleeping pills, but Lee avoids it by hitting the robot and Milo threatens that damaging the robot could put him in prison. Then the robot gave up and left Lee. He then remembered the water tree and a man who was working on something in the laboratory, but the oxygen level was getting lower and lower to 22%. He tried to stay calm and asked Milo to get out all the information about Elizabeth. From there he found out that she was a famous doctor in the field of cryogenics. He thought that she did this herself from her social media. She saw her husband and remembered his name. She asked Milo to call his number and the phone was picked up. A woman said to Leo, "That's it." Istia was confused. The woman hung up the phone. Elle tried to keep calling the number, but the woman refused to pick up. The oxygen level went down, so Lee tried to let go. He managed to untie his legs and rest for a moment. He looked around to find a way to open the room, then he was shocked by a white rat that was in the room too. He tried to open the room by force and Milo offered to give him a sedative injection. At first he refused, but then he had a plan and told Milo to give the injection. When the robot came out, he held it and pulled out the needle. It turned out he wanted to use the syringe to open the chamber, but he was electrocuted. When he was about to give up, his phone rang. The hood Monroe managed to get it. Search warrants to free Liz, but then Milo interrupts her and says that the oxygen level is now 17%. Lee says to Captain Monroe that she doesn't know why time passes so fast, and Captain Monroe says that she might be having a mental breakdown because she's in such a tight space. He told Lee to focus on real things for a long time, and Lee then stabbed herself with a needle. She remembered her husband Leo, so I told the captain that she had a husband named Leo and they were trying to have children, but Captain Monroe looked for the data and Lee said that Lee never married. Lee then told Milo to look for information about a doctor named Leo Ferguson, but there were no results. He then asked Milo to display Elizabeth's search results, which he had just seen, but nothing was displayed. He became panicked and confused. Captain Mono said that no, there was a person named Leo. He also said that Lee was a very famous doctor, but Lee had no memory of that at all. The captain said that he was born in Stockholm and raised by his mother, and he asked his mother's name. He remembered and said that his mother's name was Ellis, but the captain said that her name was Isabel. The captain continued to read information about Lee that she studied at Oxford. She remembered about Oxford and she met Leo there. He then asked the captain to find out about Leo. At the same time, the oxygen level became 15%. She became impatient and asked the captain for the code, but the captain said that he wouldn't get the code until 20 minutes later. Lee thought that the captain was lying to her, so she hung up the phone. She then saw the memory of a man who was seriously ill while she was sitting in the swimming pool for a while. Then he and the man were taken to the hospital. He then woke up because there was a telephone. But he didn't want to answer it. He asked Milo to replay the previous conversation and increase the volume there. He heard someone else telling the captain to tell Lee that he was having phone hallucination again. It rang and he didn't pick it up, but the phone rang again, and this time Lee picked it up. Captain Monroe called him again, and this time he heard a woman's voice, the same voice when he called Leo. The woman asked if Lee was in the cryogenic chamber, and he said that I wasn't. I still want to talk to Leo. But the woman said that Leo had died. I didn't believe it and told Milo to hang up the phone. The oxygen level was now only 14%. Then the phone rang and the woman called him. Bane. He didn't want to answer. He said that he knew it was Elle when he heard her voice, but I didn't want to believe that the woman had the code anyway. He said that I couldn't open the room, but I didn't care, and he kept asking for the code, so the woman gave him the code. He begged Elle not to open the room. If opened, Elle will die. It will scavenge. Will Maud Danner simulate what happened when it happened? Lee just realized that she was in outer space. The woman then explained what happened before waking up. Lee's experienced hyplep, so she could arrive somewhere to carry out her mission. The woman who spoke to her was the person who designed the system. He said that he couldn't bring Lee home, but could make Lee experience hyperlep again. Then Lee asked what mission he had to carry out. The woman said that Lee had to live on a new planet, which is 14 light years away from Earth. Her memory is returning little by little. She was following a military project but didn't know the reason for carrying out the mission. She realized that Captain Monroe only said what Lee wanted to hear, so most of it was a lie. The woman explained that they lied to Lee because Lee had become a military threat and didn't want Lee to get her memory back, so that the mission could run smoothly. She then realized that Captain Monroe was just wasting his time and fishing so that his oxygen level ran out. The woman then said that Leo had caught a virus and died, and this virus threatens human life. The woman said that Lee's life was in danger, so Lee wanted to work together. They found a way to release Lee from that space. When they tried to find a solution, the woman was arrested by the military before she was arrested. The woman asked Lee to return to the high plep before the oxygen level is only 2%. Then he found out what could make him summon his memory. Look for Leo when he said that his memory slowly started to return. Then he asked Milo, who allowed him to join this mission. Apparently L himself wanted to join in the mission. Then he looked for clues on the screen, and at that moment he realized that his hand was injured. When he pressed his hand, the memory of Leo came back, but the memory was interrupted, so he decided that he needed to be injured so that his memory would come back. He tried to open the space, so he was electrocuted and his memory came back. He was in the hospital when Leo was dying, and Leo said that they would meet again. Lee asked Milo to find information about Ellis and called her. The phone went through to Lee's mother and she cried. She said she just wanted to hear her mother's voice when the phone was disconnected. Milo reminded her that her oxygen level was only 6%. Milo just said that he would die in 3 minutes when the oxygen level was at 5%. Lee told Milo to open the room with the code he got when the room was preparing to be opened. He saw the memory that Leo was also in the cryogenic chamber like him, so he asked Milo if there were any other units besides him. Milo said that there were 10,000 other units near him. Lee asked Milo to look out, and from the small window he saw many other units. Around him he asked Milo how many units had been damaged, and Milo answered there were around 400 units and he was the only one who woke up. He asked Milo to display the condition of the cryogenic chamber, which he then remembered a file from his memory that said the number 42, so he asked Milo to display the people in number 42. He told Milo to take off his mask, and it turned out that Leo was there, but he didn't see the scar on Leo's head like in his memory, so he asked Milo to play the video in the video. L told about the memory transfer to another unit, but Lee was seen very old. Lee asked Milo to play the recording of the woman's voice, and it turned out that the woman was Lee herself. It turned out that Lee was a clone, and when she found out, she panicked. The severity of it, the more she panicked, the faster she used oxygen, so it was only 4% now. She recorded a message for Leo to get ready to die, but then she realized that she wanted to live with Leo, and Milo prepared to inject Lee with an anesthetic injection. He tried to free himself, but he was tied up when the countdown started. He managed to pull out the needle, so he survived by cutting off all the cables that were attached to him. Then he connected the cables again and continued the message. Finally, he had an idea to move the oxygen from the dead unit to Liz's cryogenic chamber, but Milo said that it would take quite a long time and I had to undergo HLEP to stay alive. He then accepted the higher slep and apologized to Milo for bothering Milo when he was already there. In the hyplep condition, the spaceship continues its journey to the destination planet. At the end we can see Leo and Lee together on a new planet. It seems that they both managed to arrive and live together on the new planet.